So, what are metrics? Well, metrics are actually a collection of costs. When you call functions within your application, the Blackfire probe will gather all the measurements from these functions, so including the wall time, the I/O time, etc., etc. And Blackfire offers you the possibility to gather all these measurements within a labeled collection, what we call metrics. So the best would be an example. So I made a quick profile here. Well, so let's switch directly to the profile. Here is the timeline view. I rendered the timeline view on purpose because this is where the metrics can be the most visible. We have this here. Well, we can see that it's definitely a Laravel application since we have a lot of Laravel metrics. And on the right, all the blocks represent function calls. And you can see that some of them have colors. So I can even filter them out so that only the featured one appear. And here you can, for example, see that here the kernel bootstrap from Laravel is actually part of the Laravel.kernel.bootstrap metric. If I can show you another one, like this one about the session middleware, we can see that the start session handle function is part of this metric, Laravel.middleware.session. And this one, the view render, we have two view renders that both are parts of the Laravel.view.render metric. So it means that each time the functions that are part of a metric, they will increment the costs. So here we have a cost of 232 milliseconds as a wall time for the Laravel.view.render metric. You can hover it here. So that's actually useful information. So you can use them within the timeline to enlight parts of your application. Some of them are, well, most of them are automatically affected to the function calls. So these are the color ones. Others are only not featured because they're actually part of different. They're not supposed to appear to be featured in a timeline, and well, most of the time you don't have to do anything to see what's to make them appear in a timeline, and you maybe won't play with it. But actually, they are very powerful stuff. You can do a lot of things with metrics, and a quick example will be the recommendations tab. Here, if I take all the two Laravel's recommendation I have, you can see that it advises me to cache the Laravel configuration and the routes. Because obviously I forgot to run the artisan config cache command and the routes cache command. So okay, there is some help and documentation about what I need to do. But just have a look here. There, it says it comes from metrics.laravel.routes.load.count 1 = 0. So it basically means that we had a test on this metric, because metrics are the smallest parts in Blackfire that you can interact with, especially when it comes to tests, but not only. So, what can I do with such metrics, and how is it? What is it all about? Well, first, we have hundreds of built-in metrics with Blackfire. So yeah, you can find all of them in the metrics documentation. So better have a look at it before defining a new one. But they are kind of generic. So if you look for Laravel here, you will have a lot of Laravel built-in metrics, but they obviously won't cover your business code. So that's why they're mostly generic. You can still do tests, define tests against this metrics, and for this, you have for each metric access to these dimensions. What we call dimensions, remember, is the different aspects of a profile. So if I look at this call graph, clicking on it, yes, this is the general wall time dimension. If I click on I/O, I will have a different aspect, different rendering. Same for CPU, same for memory. So this is important to understand the global behavior of your application. And when you're profiling, it's very important to switch from one dimension to another in order to find bottlenecks, because they can come from different parts of your applications. Right. So that's why when you use metrics, especially on tests. So that was the subject of my previous talk. You have access to count, wall time, CPU time, I/O, memory, peak memory, and so on. So that they will give you values, and very useful values. The most important one will be the count. It will be the cardinality, how many times this metric has been called, and as a metric refer to function calls, it will help you understand how many times this or that function has been called. Okay, but what's very interesting with metrics is that not only you have built-in ones so that you can implement tests, but also you can define your own. And this is where it becomes very interesting and powerful. So in order to define metrics, so here it is, better with a zoom in. You need to define them in the .blackfire.yaml file. So you just have to give it a label. It should be unique. Well, this is short label for humans. Description if you want to, but most importantly, the matching calls. So here, the markdown to HTML metric have the following matching calls. So here you specify the language, because Blackfire supports different languages, including Python and Go. So here we're talking about PHP. And then you specify the callee. So it's the method, the function that has to be called in order to increment the costs for this metric. So here we need to add the FQCN, so full qualified class name, plus the function name, and prepending a selector here. I will come to that just after that. And you can also filter out by a caller. So which is the function that calls the callee. Okay. So for example, I want here that to increment the cost of the markdown to HTML metric when this function is called by this other function, right? So you can combine them. So this will be an end. And you can also add different function calls to increment the metric. So you're not limited to only one callee, you can have several. So I was talking about the selector here. So here we are using the equal sign as a selector. So what is a selector? It gives actually information to the probe on how it should match the function. So the equal sign is the simplest. It will match the expression exactly. So here we have double backslashes because we are using double quotes here in the Blackfire YAML. But it can be, you can have a different type of selectors. So the one that I like most is the pipe, which is similar to the equal sign, but it will match instance of a class. So it will be very useful when it comes to matching implementation of an interface, for instance. You also have the caret, which will match everything starting with the following expression. And then you have two for regular expressions. So the first one, the slash, will match the regexp. So it will interpret the expression as a regexp that should match. And the exclamation mark will interpret as a regexp that should not match. So then you will have a lot of different possibilities here. So one example I can showing again in presentation mode. Okay. Here I defined a specific metric for my application. So this user activity helper is actually a very heavy function. Well, actually, it's not optimized at all here. So we can see that it's computing things very badly. So we would first need to optimize this, but at some point we would maybe cache it, because this is like, let's call it a complex algorithm, which is very heavy, and we don't want it to be called very often for several reasons. So I defined a metric about it, and I will come to this too afterwards. And I said, okay, this metric app.userActivity calculation corresponds to this function call. So app Bigfoot user activity helper, : count recent comments for user. And then what can I do with it? Well, I can define a test against it. So this is what I'm doing. On this path, I will do an assertion about it. So first I prefix my metric by the metrics word, dot the name of the metric, and then the dimension. So I choose to use count because I don't want to be called. I don't want it to be called at all. So this count should be actually 0, right? And this will happen, well, on all the sightings page. So let's have a look. This was this one. So I previously made the profile, and we can see that our tests are failing. So let's have a look at the profile in the assertions part tab, and we can see that actually my metric, the count, was called 23 times. It means that my function has been called 23 times. And well, if I want to know where, I will copy that and filter out in the Functions tab. And there I can see, we can see it actually, when I hover it, it goes yellow on the right. So I can see that, yeah, we might have a problem here. And actually it's called from the user activity text helper called from a view. Okay, so that's good. Now I showed you how to do a test about it, on tests against metrics. So another thing that was part of this metrics was this timeline stuff and the marker stuff. Both of keywords are refer to the timeline view. So the timeline true means that I want it to be featured in a timeline view. And the marker will automatically add a marker in the timeline. Let me show you. So if I switch to the timeline view, here you go. So we can see there are a lot of markers here, and I have my timeline metrics, in my timeline metrics, my custom metric appearing. It's so in a red color because I added it. I explicitly asked Blackfire to feature this metric in the timeline. So that's good. Now we can actually see where. Well, it's too thin maybe to see it. Yes. Okay. All right, let's filter events out. Okay. We can see the different ones, right? And the markers are here to give us cue points in the timeline, to give it, so you can see them as bookmarks or just cue points telling you where your metrics have been called. This can be useful, especially here, because maybe in the first place we couldn't identify where during the request we could this function was called. So here, each time it is called, I will add a marker here. Okay, you can also implement markers in a different way. So let me show you that. This is using the PHP SDK. So it's just a replacement. You can add our marker within the code with this code. So instead of adding a marker in within my Blackfire.yaml, I can also add this code, this line of code in my code base. And important thing is that even if you don't have a profile ongoing, well, it will still be production safe. So because where there is no profile, well, this is explained here. This function call operates as a no-op instruction. So it will basically do nothing. But if you're not comfortable with adding code, Blackfire specific code in your code base, then you may just add this define a metric and add marker true for this. Okay, there's two things I want to show you again. First is, well, I showed you previously that we have a lot of built-in metrics, but sometimes it's well, most of the time, you will wonder, okay, I want to implement non-regression tests, but I don't know where to start. I don't know where those built-in metrics come from. And this is where the Metrics Explorer comes into place. So the Metrics Explorer is a kind of fancy word for these small colored squares that appear in your call graph in the function called lists. So here, for example, I click on this one, and I can see that this function actually contributes to the SQL.pdo.queries metric, which bubbles up to SQL.queries and bubbles up to SQL. And this one, the app models comment new from builder. This one contributes to laravel.eloquence.models.created metric. So, and this gives us the entities.created metric. See the number here? Actually, this is the same number, or almost the same number here. Yeah, because here, this one is for comments. The comments model, we have 1023. And I'm pretty sure that if I'm looking for eloquent, I will find two others. No. Oh, interesting. Entities created. Okay, I only have this one here. The other, maybe the two others are too fast. So the Metrics Explorer is precisely this thing. So within the function lists, you can quickly, at a glance, find where the metrics are being triggered from your code, from your application. So here, the configuration file was the one. I have a laravel.config.load, which is bad here because I should have cached the config. Right. So this feature will help you find the metrics. But now there is something very special I want to show you. And this very special thing is actually probably the most powerful feature about metrics. Because with metrics, you can, match function calls directly. But what about arguments of these functions? And actually, this is possible to capture those arguments. And so with this argument capturing, modify how your call graph is being rendered. Let's take this example. We have a very simple class with this class greetings with a phrase function which takes two arguments. So we may call it in two different ways, right? So, even more different ways. So here with a hello and there and hi there. So to discriminate these calls within the call graph, so I will still have my selector. So with the targeting the function itself. So you might see that actually I developed this hash, the callee hash, because I want to add this new key, the argument key. And here I want to add the first argument. So it's one index, not zero indexed. The first argument, whatever is the value passed, I want it to be captured. Right, so star is a catch-all. You have other kind of selectors that are also available. And then instead of showing only one node with two calls, I will have two different nodes with two different values that appear here, hi and hello. And the good, we can go even further because in the first place here, we only capture the first arguments, but actually the function can take two arguments. And well, you can specify it and discriminate the arguments even more. So here I want also the second argument to be whatever. And the first one here, well, I want to be either hello or hi. And this makes it possible then to have 4 different nodes here for the same function. And you can even work with hashes, associative arrays here. So that's very interesting. And actually, this is the process behind the thing I showed in my previous presentation about how to find a SQL query in the whole haystack of function calls. Let's do it again. Well, I'm copying this SQL query and I'm pasting it here. It makes it possible to filter out these 2 functions. The one is for preparing the statement, and the second one to execute it. And you can see that actually this is the argument that has been captured. So if I center the graph on it, I will see it as well within the node. So that's it. With this metrics, you are actually you have all the power in your hands to modify the rendering of your call graph, and so to get even more precision in your profiles. So yeah, metrics are good. Use metrics; it's good.